Okay, unfortunately, I was recording again and it just popped off after somebody called me. So I had a student ask me this question. I need help with an essay on the question, does the 1917 trailer represent the military as heroic or not? Okay, so I pulled it up and, so I'm gonna go through it really quickly. Let me turn down the volume. Okay, so if you just go through the video yourself as well,
Message.
I'll quickly skim through it.
Calling
Look
off
at the
tomorrow
colours,
morning's
okay?
attack.
Are they particularly vibrant?
That is
Is
the
it
German
dark,
front line.
darkness, yelling? This is the trenches, it's destruction. The colors of the wall, they go into darkness. Shot, so what happens? Loss of life. Guns running, destroyed buildings.
We need to keep moving.
This guy's
Come
dead.
on.
You can see even before 1 second ago was no man's land. Okay, so keep that in mind. What I'm saying. Bridge is broken.
We can't possibly make it that way, man. You got it.
Dust, fire, burning,
Your brother
man
among them.
running.
Good luck.
Good luck. So suspense building, warfare, loss of life. People are dying here. I think this is a foreshadowing of the film that alludes to something. Think about what 1917 is. I typed it on the thing, but if you know a bit of history, 1914 is when World War One happened, and 1917 is within World War One. It is depicted between. So when I teach students, I really want you guys to learn the context really quickly. And I rephrased it to say, how does Mendes portray war in the trailer of 1917? How does Mendes portray? Mendes is the director, by the way. I put it up here. Sam Mendes is the director. It's a brilliant movie. If you watch through it, it's a great movie. But firstly, we need to look at, what are the important things, the literary elements. The director's Sam Mendes. The genre of the movie, it's war. Very easy, okay? But now we want to look at some other things. What is the tone, okay? The tone is also known as the author's purpose, also known as the director's purpose. What is the person that made the film trying to say? And they deliver it in a certain tone. The tone of this film, you could see, is violence. It's chaotic, it's horrifying, it's energetic, it's suspenseful. There's a lot of things going on in the film, but ultimately it's about warfare. Nobody's going to portray war as positive, okay? So it's just a certain, we can say a certain shade of negativity. Some people depict the war as necessary. Some people depict the war as inevitable. Others depict war as a result of corruption. In this film, we can see there is quite a bit of corruption, and I'll get to that. Why is there corruption? Okay, irony is a big part of this film as well. Okay, if you looked at the trailer, you'll know what happens, and essentially it is the high command of the British commanding the two soldiers, Blake and Schofield, to deliver a message to isolated British soldiers that are planning an attack on the German lines. But why would they send just two soldiers on such a dangerous mission what is on the line is thousands of British lives, right? The message could have been delivered in other ways, by dropping it by a plane, by dropping it on a car, and for the car to drive to the front lines. There was so many easier ways to, and more solid ways to deliver the message and limit the possibility for the loss of life. So that is an example of irony, right? Why would they do that? It's sort of ironic. And then you saw No Man's Land. So this is what we call the examples of irony, right? So irony for the first type was the mission. I thought was pretty ironic. Other than that, No Man's Land. If you know what No Man's Land is, great. Otherwise, quickly synopsis is when two teams entrench themselves across a front of warfare, and then they dig trenches, and then they put barbed wire. They bomb the land in front, and there's dead bodies everywhere. So, and it's depicted as being a place of profound danger. But in this film, it was hardly dangerous, right? All we saw was a number of dead bodies, barbed wire. They weren't really in danger. Okay, so it's already showing, warfare it doesn't really make a lot of sense. There's not a lot of consistency, and No Man's Land, for example, has a certain element of irony inside. Okay, so you see the tone. What else is there? A lot of the other, we'll talk about the imagery, it's very alone. There's a lot of isolation. It's two people on a mission to save thousands, and they traverse majority of the film and the trailer was them alone, them getting into traps and stuff. And there's the ongoing suspense, okay? We'll call it the extended metaphor of all or nothing. It's like when people play poker, they say all or nothing, you know? So they just go all in. Okay, in this case, it is Schofield has to reach his destination or what happens. His brother dies and thousands of other British people die. So he's going to risk his life all or nothing, right? So it really, what does this signify? This imagery you can say the imagery of the commander resisting to stop the attack and the soldiers running upwards of the trench towards an ambush signifies how haunting and blood-filled the war was, right here. So, if that was your family member running through that, any of those bombshells could have killed them. It is honestly very tragic. You wouldn't want that to happen, right? So that is that. So I was talking about themes before. I'm not sure if I talked about it in this version of recording yet, but we'll quickly see. The first theme is warfare, okay? And this is ultimately what you need. It shows what? It shows the atrocities of warfare, right? So where the generals give lowly soldiers dangerous missions where they chill alone in the trenches. It shows a corruption in the hierarchy of the army. Okay, so what else about this? It also shows the fact many of the generals don't really care about the lives of the other soldiers. That was the irony of the mission. They just have to maintain their status in the military, their social standing. They don't really care about their lives. There's a saying in Batman. It says, some men don't care about money. They just want to watch the world burn. Okay, it's similar to that. Some men just really like warfare, and it's very tragic. But these are also the men that are not going to war. Think about politicians that send vast amounts of armies internationally to fight. These politicians are chilling in their mansions, playing golf, whereas the lowly people are fighting, right? So you can say this film is actually trying to challenge the current military standings of our society. Interesting. Other than that, there is loss. So in this scene, I'm not sure if you remember, here, what happens here? Okay, there's a plane trashing down right now. But here, this plane comes in and actually, this is where the scene where, was it there? What happens there? You can see again the tone. The plane's on fire, the building's gonna be on fire, they're running through broken buildings, these two men are scared for their life. It's not a pleasant tone. And you can say Mendes portrays war as rather depraved. Okay? People are depraved of their humanity. And quite in this scene, Blake actually he dies after trying to help the German pilot. He was very selfless. The German pilot was actually in the plane. It's not in the trailer, but the German pilot was in the plane. The Blake pulls him out, but then he was mercilessly stabbed and he died from the injuries. So really it shows that war is very cold and there is a lack of humanity in war, right? So it shows the devastation and the human cost of war. Other than that, it's just the last theme is bravery. It's very brave for Schofield and Blake to actually risk their entire life to, try to save other people. Mendes tried to increase the stakes by saying, okay, the other people, one of them is your brother. So when there's family involved, it becomes sort of a obligation to save your brother. Whereas if it's some random people, you might not necessarily want to risk your entire life to save them, even though they're on your team, right? So, it demonstrates extreme bravery throughout. Both of them were getting shot. And even at the ending scene, you saw Schofield running across the battlefront, and almost getting bombed many times. So, yeah, it's a pretty interesting film, okay? How would you answer, knowing all of this now, the ironic aspect, the thematic portrayals of war, foreshadowing, hope is a dangerous thing. That is one thing that popped out, okay? Try to think about what that actually means. It's trying to keep the suspense in the video, right? Tone is violent, chaotic, blah, blah, blah. And then Mendes, how does he portray these things, okay? So, how does Mendes portray war in the trailer of 1917? It should become pretty obvious that the film exposes the terrible conditions in the trenches. The weather is terrible, the treatment of the soldiers are horrendous, and the soldiers are all depicted as being depressed. They're traumatized, they're hurt, they're injured, and ultimately many of them lose their lives. They spend many years in this environment of warfare, of fire, burning, guns shooting, and they could lose their life any second. it's a rather big film, and from this you can see that Mendes does not portray war very positively in a positive light. Rather, he exposes the human cost of warfare. That's how I would tell you to write it. Try to come up with something and write it in a proper structure. So we will say the peel structure, right? Remember? So point, how would you say this? Mendes portrays war as depraved of humanity, blah, blah, blah. Whatever you want to say from what I just gave you here. And then really try to justify this using what we talked about here. So elements like irony, talk about the tone. And how was the tone created? We looked at colors, we looked at sound, we looked at dynamics, okay? So people are yelling all the time, they're screaming, they're running. The sound is very high tempo, it's very piercing, and it's very unsettling in the beginning if you listen to the sound again.
Hope is a
Listen
dangerous
to the
thing.
background sound. Okay, so it's like it's a sound you typically hear in horror movies, right? And finally, the colors, they're all very dark and they're very muddy, reminiscent of war, obviously. So you can say that all of these complement to deliver author's tone. Okay, so use this to analyze this text and let me know if you still need help, okay?